a mid-tier power before the war absorbed everything that the US and Israel could throw at it, and it has emerged, arguably, as the stronger side in this war. If you pushed me, which I'm happy to get into, about how China has just proven to the world that it has harmonized hydrocarbon fungibility, and this is a really, really insightful. Yeah, where to begin? So much to discuss, and also lots of stuff that we're working through that we haven't published or would never publish, but still things that I'm thinking about. Let's start with the Iran war. Look, I think as time goes by and historians truly assess what happened here, and the spin and politics are sort of put to the side, the U.S. achieved none of its objectives in this excursion against Iran. If you go back, and we have gone back and watched the video that the president released from Mar-a-Lago on the 1st of March, and you compare the stated objectives and justification for the war and where we are now, the profoundly different outcome than the president had been led to believe or assumed or was otherwise convinced against his better judgment, however you want to frame it. This is a stunning result. And kudos to the president for taking the L, even though that's not how it's being shaped. But I do think if you start with that as a foundational input into your mental model, it's wildly bullish for gold and Bitcoin and all the US dollar alternatives, because it is a turning point in the history of the last 50 years of US dollar military-backed hegemony. A mid-tier power before the war absorbed everything that the US and Israel could throw at it, and it has emerged, arguably, as the stronger side in this war. It's just you can't deny that. And so why were Bitcoin and gold trading sort of negative correlation with peace? Because there were some very bad tail risk outcomes on the board that this ceasefire hopefully takes off the board. And you're seeing gold run today. You're seeing Bitcoin run today. You're seeing oil collapse today. We could talk about that. We have a piece coming out tomorrow, by the way, which we think is a profound outcome from this war, which I'm happy to get into, about how China has just proven to the world that it has harmonized hydrocarbon fungibility. And this is a really, really insightful thing that has happened. Our first foray into drawing some conclusions from it comes out tomorrow. So I know that I've covered a lot of ground, but I would say that if you pushed me, the bear market in Bitcoin is over. Absent a restart of the war, there's profound things happening, historic things happening, decades-long trends reversing. You compare what went down in this war to what happened in Desert Storm, right? I mean, and so now you have, by the way, over the weekend in the Financial Times, China boldly announcing grand expansion plans for Enbridge, which is its, WAN-based alternative to SWIFT. Iran is being compensated. The reason why Iran has been pushing for the freedom to charge fees in the Strait of Hormuz is not about the money. It's about forcing Iran off the sanctions list. You can't pay Iran without violating sanctions, right? So these are spoils of war that Iran is demanding. And I would close by noting that in the last few days, as Iran and the US were pretending as though they were still debating the MOU, the Iranians were consulting the Chinese and the Russians. And the role that the Russians and the Chinese have played in all of this is not to be understated, even though it is underreported. So just really historic stuff. I mean, I don't want to. One of the things we've really prided ourselves on is not indulging in hyperbole for clicks during this war. And I'm not trying to be hyperbolic now, but it is a profound outcome. And I think sometimes in the heat of the headlines and the spin and the don't be a panikin on Twitter and, Trump is great in UFC and, 250, Trump's birthday. I get it. But something really important just happened, and it's important, I think, not to lose sight of that.
It's very interesting. Before we get into energies, I'm just curious, James, if you share any of that sentiment, if you do view the outcome of this war as a kind of at least a major signpost regards to U.S. dollar dominance around the world.
Yeah, no, it's really good point. You can't, and that's true. You can't underestimate the involvement of other massive geopolitical interests in this war. I mean, you can't understate that. So, or you can't overstate that. So, look, we talked about, I think last time, is one of the largest missteps I think that we've had with our sanctions in recent times and in modern times. One of the largest, if not the largest misstep we've had was freezing Russian assets and kicking them off SWIFT at the start of the Ukraine war. That was just a catastrophic mistake by the Biden administration. And it put the Treasury in a really difficult position. And so, with us spending more than $2 trillion than we take in on our, so we're running a $2 trillion deficit annually. We need as many buyers of U.S. Treasuries as we can get. And like Doomberg just said, removing sanctions is that's a major win for the other side. So like we expected, Trump had to have something to save face, and so the strait is open, oil is dropping. That means that inflation will be coming down. As we all know, oil and energy is the number one component in every single good and service that's sold around the world, and so it's a great talking point for him. But the reality is, I can't get into what his head was or who was in the room when they decided to attack Iran. What I can surmise is that he had such great, swift resolution in Venezuela that his hubris allowed him to believe that they would just swoop in, wipe off the current regime, and replace them with a new regime and go about the new world order. And that clearly didn't happen. They have plenty of successors in place to battle that. Getting citizens to revolt it's not an easy task when you've got a regime that's willing to kill its own citizens to stay in power. That's not. And so I think it was just underestimated just how strong Iran would be and how difficult it would be to strong arm them into going down paths that we want them to go down. And so it's not surprising at all. How much does this matter? Well, I think we are witnessing a faction, the fractioning. The world is beginning to fracture, and we need as many buyers of treasuries as we can possibly get. And this hasn't helped it, in my opinion, in any way, shape, or form. And so we're going to continue to have to implement ways to get around that. And I would be interested to hear Doomberg's take on all that.
So the next logical, so far I agree with that, and I just pulled up the Bitcoin chart today because I took it off my launch pad a couple of months ago, and I see that it's up.
Just can't look at it. Just don't look at it.
No, I had for a variety of other reasons I didn't have space for it, but I am pretty convinced that the bear market in Bitcoin is over. And look, I mean, we have plenty of Bitcoin maxis as subscribers, and as I said last time, I'm a no coiner, but it doesn't mean that I don't call it as I see it. And here's why. So let's follow through James's logic. The next step. So in a multipolar world, the U.S. needs the dollar to be wildly less strong than it is now in order to reconstitute its manufacturing base. And we'll talk about a long shot sort of interpretation of the SpaceX IPO, which we would probably never write about, but I'll share with you guys a little later, and I think it's all related to this. But and the new Fed chair, yada yada. It all roads lead to yield curve control. I mean, at some point. And so, in a world where they're going to save the bond market and let the currency slide because the Pentagon needs a weaker dollar anyway, it's wildly bullish for gold and Bitcoin and the other sort of for land and real things, tangible things, inflation. In the end, when push comes to shove, they're going to print. And so when I see, Bitcoin at 67,000 today, that's the market telling you something, that the bottom of this bear market, again, not trading advice. I don't own any Bitcoin and blah, 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 blah. I do think that if we're right, we're entering a phase where even the neocons in Washington have to admit that outsourcing the industrial base to China has led to a diminished military dominance over the rest of the world. This was just proven to all but the most partisan of observers in the Middle East. And the first step is to admit you have a problem. The second step is to begin fixing it. And to fix it, you can't have the US dollar where it is. You can't be reliant on China. All the things that were in place that allowed China to grind away with our help and encouragement at the sort of Western military industrial complex needs to be undone, which is why I think this war in Iran was so foolish to begin with. The proper strategy was what Trump started with, which is concentrate on the Western Hemisphere, get control of the energy assets, become a global energy superpower, bring in the tariffs, undo the mistakes of the Biden administration. Iran compounded all of those mistakes wildly. And so with the time that Trump has left in office, assuming the midterms are a complete catastrophe, get back on that original track. And so in a multipolar world, what does multipolarity mean? It means the US dollar is far weaker than it is. It means there's a place for gold in the settlement of imbalances of international trade. It means, gold for oil is back on instead of gold for treasuries. And in that world, Bitcoin, God bless Michael Saylor. Maybe he got saved by the bell here.
James, I'm curious your thoughts on that, but I also wanted to add there too, is there anything in particular that you're seeing or interpreting from the bond market? Because I was just looking at the 10-year treasury, and it seems like we did get basically a drop in yields following the Thursday announcement and the Sunday announcement as well too. But it's kind of trickling back up. Like I would have anticipated yields maybe to come back more, but perhaps I'm thinking in the wrong direction.
Yeah, no. Look, like I said, the war is it's huge, and the impact from energy prices massive. But you have this meeting this week that the Fed is meeting Tuesday, Wednesday. We're going to hear from the new Fed chair, and so the bond market is a little bit uneasy. Like where is he going to come out? Is he going to be hawkish, like a lot of people have expected him to be because of his past sentiment? Is he going to just cave to Trump's demands and be dovish right out of the gates, which some people believe? I don't believe that's true. And so the bond market's kind of on the fence here, in my opinion, trying to figure out exactly where he's going to start. Now, why does that matter? It matters because of exactly what Doomberg just said, which is all roads lead to some sort of yield curve control, more printing of dollars. It's just math. It's the math you can't change it. You can't change the math unless we wake up and somehow balance the budget, get to surplus without impacting Social Security and other services detrimentally. Which good luck with that miracle. Mm-hmm. You are in a world where there's going to be expansion of the money supply in the United States. There's just no way around it. And so what are the implications of the Fed's actions? Well, you could see today, like I said before, the Fed funds futures are pricing in a 93% probability of a full cut by January, 80% probability by
cut or hike.
I'm sorry, hike. I apologize. I just have cut in my head for so long that I can't get it out. They've got a hike priced in there for one full hike priced in there for January and 80% probability of a hike by December. So if he comes out dovish, here's the issue. He comes out dovish and you hear these politicians say, this is really important for the listeners. This is critical to understand. When you hear politicians and you hear Trump come out and say, we need to lower rates, it's got to help the consumer. Lower rates on the Fed funds is not going to immediately help the consumer. Let's just be clear about this. If you've got some cash sitting in a money market account, you're going to receive less interest on that cash. The moment they lower rates, it's not going to help. The second thing is, if they lower rates into a strong economy, and the investing base, the bond investors and equity investors, they interpret that as inflationary. The 10-year yield will go up. And the 10-year yield is what every single consumer product that is based on debt is based on. That a debt in credit card loans, car loans, auto loans, mortgage securities, mortgage loans, HELOCs, personal lines of credit, everything is priced off of that 10-year. And it's priced around the world. So that's the benchmark treasury of the world. And it's the benchmark treasury of the consumer. So what you're watching is the investors are trying to figure out, are we stepping into a continued inflationary environment, even though price of oil is coming down and you've got the yields on the 10-year coming down because of this so-called resolution? Let's pretend that it is really done. Then the question is, okay, are we still in a world where inflation is going to continue to heat up? You've seen the graph of the 70s inflation and up against current inflationary environment from 2020 until now. And they're moving lockstep, not the same amount of yield, but the same gravity of it. You can see exactly where that has been. And that's what it's in investors' minds. They're worried that, are we getting into another 80s style re-inflationary environment where you're going to need yields higher on the long end of the curve in order to be compensated for that risk, for the duration risk, and you'll get an actual real yield on your investment that will outpace inflation, which gets all the way back to the original point that Doomberg just said. And that means yield curve control, which ultimately means printing more money and more inflation. And so that means that the US government, the Treasury, will refuse to pay a real yield on debt. Why would they do that? They would do that because it debases the dollar. It brings down the value of it in the future, which means that they can pay down that debt, all of the debt that's rolling over every single year. It's about $12 trillion now, to $13 trillion when you include all interest that's going to come due in the next year, that they've got to roll back over. And they can't go out on the curve on that. So they're going to continue to push down that yield curve so they can term out some debt at some point. But at this point, they're going to be, ultimately, they'll be buying that debt to keep those yields down